SVP of Worldwide Ecosystems and Cognitive Applications, and then also ran the weather company during his tenure and was a direct report of Gina, the CEO. So firstly, welcome, Bob. It's wonderful to have you here today. So I want to jump in right away because something that's really been on my mind is, when we think about the AI era, one of the greatest tensions that we're seeing play out in the technology world is the question between open source and closed source, or closed, and how open and how closed. When you were at IBM, one of the programs you began and you ran was the Call for Code program, which had something like 600,000 developers participate in it, 180 countries, and it was all about getting developers to work together to solve bigger problems in an open source fashion. If you think about that in the context of today, what learnings should we have from that time?
Yeah, okay, so first let me just start by saying, for the time that I've been in this industry, I think this is the most fundamentally exciting time that any of us could be, or whether you're a technologist, you're a data scientist, you're a marketer, and if you don't embrace this moment, you are going to be left behind. And someone said that before. And if I go through my journey, when Shiv and I met at Razorfish, that was the promise of Razorfish. As Suzanne said, it was the promise of creating a great value exchange between the consumer and the brand. And we didn't have the technology then to do it. We thought we did. We promised we did. We told people we did. But quite honestly, for what I learned at IBM, and IBM has been doing LLMs and modeling for a very, very long time. I ran the supply chain business, so anomaly detection and all these things that we're all talking about now are not new, not novel, it's just being applied in a different way. Okay, so the fact of the matter is, we are finally at this point where the technology is accessible. Think about, cloud technology. That changed everything up also, right? The accessibility to AWS, the accessibility to Google. Okay, so when you think about the reason why all that innovation happened, it's because it was open sourced. People were allowed to have access to these technologies, okay? If you think about the core fundamental about what open source means, it means the fact that it's open to the public, to developers, to use, to create, and they also have to contribute to throw back. Okay, so the misnomer that I have struggled with now in the last couple of months is when we talk about these big AI systems, people are saying they're open, when, quite honestly, they're closed. And there's a couple of fundamental principles when you're in the software business about what open means. And IBM was one of the big architects around Linux. Number one was you contribute. You have contributors. They contribute to the code, right? That code is accessible to other developers and other data scientists. And the second most important thing, and there are others, but the second most important thing there is there's an open governance system, meaning that one company does not control the code and the distribution of it. That is the base layer of open source. Oh, I have someone calling me. That's the base layer of that. And then what happens is companies innovate on top of that. Okay, so what they do is they create projects off of that open source technology, and you create companies out of that. So if you think about now Kubernetes, you think about all these new technologies that have been out, it's because there was an open source project that was done and innovation spurred around. So when you hear things like, I don't know how the LLM works, or I have my own LLM, that concerns me going forward. So I think the debate about calling LLMs open source is still a misnomer that has to be worked out. Now I will tell you, years ago, even in the partnering organizations, AWS was saying they were open sourced, and they weren't open sourced. And the community called AWS out. I can't remember the exact year. But I remember that moment in time where they changed their entire partner strategy to go from you could only code on AWS cloud to now I'm an open source cloud and I will partner with other people. The community called them out. So my hope is, Shiv, as we evolve our LLM strategies and these companies are formed, that there will be a loud cry from the community about what it means to be open source, how those communities are set up on open source. And
I'm sure, not that I was in the middle of all the drama with Sam Altman and going to Microsoft, coming back, blah, 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 blah. But all of that, there's a lot of people in the Valley and just in the tech community at large that do firmly believe that open source spurs technology. And in my experience, I've seen that.
So thanks for that, Bob. I have to admit, when you got that phone call, I thought that was Sam Altman saying that he actually disagrees with you. But just to double click on this a bit more, I subscribe to those philosophies. I think many of us in this room do. But when you have an organization like OpenAI with what is arguably a rather complicated governance structure, hopefully getting cleaner, but they have so much access to capital, so much control, unlimited access to resources, technologists, data, you name it. Practically, do you think we'll move in the direction of open source, just given that they're in the lead? And then the second part of the question is, what can we be doing to move the world forward in that direction?
Yeah, no, look, that's why I think the community has to come together of contributors to really manage what that open source layer is. Now, that doesn't prevent a company like OpenAI or Perplexity to basically build upon that open source technology and build a competitive advantage. Why is the AWS cloud better than, let's say, a Google cloud? Because they've created features that maybe aren't on the Google cloud, right? But the foundational layer is an open source piece of technology. So it's not that, but you can't call your product open sourced when it's not open sourced. And I think that's what we have to sort of delineate between the two. And look, the idea, this is a very fundamental piece that, Suzanne talked about the two guys, Facebook to Google. I fundamentally believe that innovation is spurred by bringing an open ecosystem together. I have seen it happen, whether it's in the supply chain business, whether it's in the asset management system. The more companies and institutions you get involved, the more innovation actually comes out of the product for yourself. And you actually, if you're smart enough, you can actually compete better by it. And quite honestly, you can create better data, which gives you competitive advantage as an enterprise company.
No, super interesting. Let's now, this I think naturally bleeds into another question I have for you, which is, when we think about responsible AI, so I know you were at IBM, you were at Davos when, IBM announced principles for the AI era, and that was I think 2017. 2017. Yeah. Since then, IBM, I think in 2020, expanded on those principles, set up a lab, all about driving responsible technology and new policies in that world. Fast forward to 2024 today. Do you think we're moving forward? Do you think responsible AI is at the forefront? Do you think we'll navigate this AI era, with appropriate levels of transparency, security, and sort of in a mature way?
Yeah, no, look, I have all the faith in all of our systems that we will navigate in the right way. So I'm always sort of on the optimistic side of this. There'll always be the evil side, right? And it's very easy to be on the evil side. As my mother said, it's always harder to sort of be positive and look forward on this stuff. So I always believe that we will navigate through these waters. The most important thing that I learned at IBM was in 2017, Ginny Rometty announced sort of the fundamental AI ethical principles in Davos, and they produced a paper. And it was sort of at that moment where we were just starting to do really deep machine learning and put it into our products. So a very simple example would be anomaly detection for supply chain, okay? Really simple, but it sort of was making its own sort of decisions based on the code that we were giving it. It wasn't actually predicting tokens yet. But the first principle was explainability. It was, you needed to know how the model was working. If you didn't know how the model was working, you should not be putting it out. Okay, that was the first principle that was out there. And I would suggest to you today, I'm not sure the companies who are developing our LLMs are actually know how that model is working. And the reason why we spent so much time talking about explainability was we couldn't get our clients to adopt our technology if they didn't understand what the decisions were being made. So think about being in an insurance company, and all of a sudden the model is deciding your underwriting decisions. If you didn't know how those underwriting decisions were going to be made, the underwriter wasn't very happy. So we had to open up that box. So we went after explainability. The second piece, which I think the panel mentioned before, was about fairness. Was about sort of, are you training the model appropriately with data, so it's not biased. We have a long way to go around that, okay? And I would suggest to you, even today, with some of the models that are there, they are biased based on public data. And a new research report by IBM that they just put out says actually small data, it can be actually much more effective in training your enterprise LLM than actually going out and getting in and bringing in big public data. And then think about that, right? Because if you have a particular task that you want to go after, having a small set of data can actually train it so that actually the predictive answer doesn't hallucinate as much as it has. And then the third one, the fourth one is transparency. I won't go into all of them, but just on those three principles, I believe that we need some kind of regulation, government oversight, at least on those three principles, to say if you are going to release some kind of code that is in the AI space, it has to adhere to the following things. It has to be explainable. You have to tell me how it was trained, and you have to be transparent about how it's going to develop from there going forward. And I don't think we're there yet.
So Bob, just for a split second, I want to play the devil's advocate, or maybe play the devil in a way. So some folks in the industry, and I live in the Bay Area, and folks over there would say, that's all well and good, but we're in a geopolitical war with China. If we wait to be perfectly responsible and figure out explainability, which we know they haven't. Anthropic is the only one that's a little further along than the others, but by and large, they don't know how the LLMs work. What do you say to the fact that we are at risk of losing a broader geopolitical battle?
I'm not saying that we'll lose anything. I'm just saying that we actually be smarter. If we actually took the time to understand how the LLMs were making the decisions, we could actually do better. We could co-op models together. We could actually bring data in that's probably better and more effective than maybe what they're doing. If we could actually train LLMs on small data sets, we'd be much farther ahead of maybe how the Chinese are actually going after this, because they're taking massive amounts of data. And by the way, the cost of processing this, I know we had the marketing panel on here, right? But the cost of using LLMs in a marketing process is extremely costly. I know we're talking about the savings, because even to get to the other side of it, it costs a lot of money to actually get the processing done. I think it's 3 times just a search algorithm when you go on Perplexity and search for something. So there's a cost component to this that's also important. But all I'm advocating for, Shiv, is not the fact that we are in a war, and I get that around technology, but we have to understand how these machines think, or how they make their decisions. And quite honestly, you could use LLMs to help you understand how the LLMs are making a decision. Like, this thing could feed itself in a way where you at least have checks and balances on things. The other thing the LLMs could be doing for you, it can root out bias for you. At the weather company, we launched something, Bias for AI. It was all about whether or not you were actually sub-targeting certain segments. The LLMs were helping us to figure that out.
No, that's great. And I love LLMs teaching LLMs.
Yes.
We need them to do some work too. So before I go to the next question, I want to do a very quick audience poll, building on the last conversation. Because Bob alluded to this as well. How many of you in the room, please raise your hand, think there should be some oversight, regulatory, governance, all that? Wow. You, relative to the earlier panel, quite a difference there, ratio, but I gotta admit, I take a lot of heart and comfort in that. Okay, let's shift gears. Another theme I'm keen for us to chat about. So, we're just about coming out of this AI assistant era, where we were all very excited about prompting, and as Amit says, you're prompting quotient. But we know that's the tip of the iceberg when it comes to AI. And we're fast moving on that continuum to AI agents, where they're able to do not just respond to us, but accomplish tasks, complete jobs, guide us, do the work, and then maybe report back. What do you think about that journey and some of its implications?
Oh my God, I think it's fantastic.
For all the career counseling I do with people, most people are bored of their jobs. Right? They don't like doing Excel spreadsheets. They don't like doing the campaign reports. They don't like doing the PowerPoints. They're bored at their jobs. Okay, so I'm taking all that shit away from you. That's what's going to happen. All that stuff's going to go away, and you're going to get to do higher level thinking. Now, will everyone survive? Probably not. But the fact of the matter is, these tools are going to revolutionize the way that we've done. We still do media plans on Excel spreadsheets. That is absolutely ridiculous because, the programmatic world didn't really satisfy what we said it was going to do. We should not be doing that anymore. We should not be paying somebody $120,000 a year to do a damn spreadsheet on a campaign. It doesn't make any sense in the world for that. So I actually see it, Shiv, as sort of this evolution. Now, there was a great article in Information that talked about sort of embracing AI. Don't shun it. Figure out how to bring it in. And I was really encouraged today to see the panel and all the product folks talking about how they're embracing AI at whatever level they're embracing it in. But I differ. I don't think you have to make a platform decision today. I think you have to be as promiscuous as you want to be with everyone who's out there to figure out how you actually are going to bring in AI. I would suggest to you, just like we did a programmatic for Shiv when we did social media way back when, Shiv was the first guy who came to me and said, you need to be on Twitter. I'm like, how do you spell it? I had no idea what it was at that time. And
I feel I owe you an apology for that.
No, it's okay. It's all right. But it is about sort of who is the brains in your organization that's going to get out there, understand what's happening, so that you can bring it in casually into your organization. What Microsoft's doing with Copilot and integrating into your productivity tools. I challenge you, don't use Google Search for a week and just use Perplexity. You will see a completely difference in how you actually interface with your computer. These things are out there for you to sort of use, and we should embrace them, but it's going to happen very quickly. But I do not think at this point you need to make a choice and say, this is what I'm going to go standardize on. The world is just evolving too quickly.